Welcome back to another episode of Press Play, Media Strategies from Scot Media Tulsa. I'm your host, Jeromee Scot, and today we're diving into a critical topic for any business or spokesperson who is about to step in front of the camera. We're talking about media training. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting to get comfortable with media opportunities, the importance of being prepared cannot be overstated. A news interview can be a great opportunity to showcase your business, but it can also pose risks if you're unprepared. So what exactly is media training, and how is it essential before your next on-camera appearance? We'll talk about that and more in this episode of Press Play. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of this podcast. I'm really excited about this topic today. Media training is something I have done for years with contacts of mine in both the business world and also nonprofits. There are a lot of folks who think that they are prepared to go on camera and then quickly find out they're not. So the importance of media training is something that I really stress with all my clients, with any professional contacts I have, and anyone that I'm working with on any project, whether it's launching a new business, maybe you're looking to try to get some earned media, or if you're a nonprofit agency trying to get some public awareness about a mission or an initiative you're working on. Media opportunities are a great way to do that, but you have to be prepared. So today we're talking about the importance of media training, how it works, and what's all involved. So the first thing I always tell clients with media training is that it's important to plan ahead. When it comes to news interviews, time often is of the essence. It's something that you'll get a call at maybe 8 or 9 in the morning and will be requested to be on camera by noon. So you don't have a lot of time to prep and be prepared the day of an interview request. So it's important that media training is part of your strategy to make sure you're always ready for when a reporter calls. Journalists work on very tight schedules, and so that means your interview is likely to be short as well. So media training helps you develop concise, impactful statements, what we refer to as kind of key messaging that you can deliver quickly and very clearly. The goal is to make sure your primary points are heard and, more importantly, understood. They don't get lost in the shuffle. So being able to distill your message into soundbite sized nuggets will ensure that nothing important gets left behind. So while we talked about the importance of being prepared ahead of time, really one of the main benefits of media training is to prepare you for an on-camera interview. That could be as with a reporter in the field. It could be in studio. So you might be called to come to the TV station or radio station and do an interview, whether it's live or recorded. And media training really helps manage nervousness and helps you build confidence. So for many people, the idea of being on camera really is nerve-wracking. I've seen that a lot as people think that they're prepared in a world where we have smartphones constantly recording social media videos. How many of us do Zooms pretty regularly? But when you get to an interview and you're standing in front of a camera, or if you're seated on an interview set with multiple cameras, very bright lights, it just seems like the world goes quiet. All eyes are on you and people will clam up very quickly. It's perfectly normal to feel a little anxious, but media training gives you the tools to manage that anxiety. It's important to have practice sessions and get constructive feedback. Through that, you gain confidence. I often work with clients to record those sessions. So I will sit my client down, set up cameras and lights, and prepare them for what they can expect during a media interview. It lets them see themselves in the recorded version afterwards. You can go through what worked and what didn't. You can clearly see that they have beads of sweat on their forehead, and it helps you help them get more confident and relaxed during media interviews. So through media training, often we'll go through several mock interviews on various topics so that when a real one happens, the clients are calm, collected, and in control. It's important to note, and I have another blog about this on my website, that journalists often will not provide questions in advance. They'll give you topics, but they won't provide questions. So media training with someone like myself who has a background in journalism is really crucial because I know what questions you're going to be asked or will likely be asked. I know follow-ups that may come. So again, having that media training really helps prepare clients and prepare business owners and anyone else for potential questions when they won't receive those in advance from journalists. In addition, media training can help get you prepared for what a reporter might ask you as far as what visuals you might need. If you're working with a TV reporter, they're going to ask you to shoot B-roll or video for their story. And I've seen that a lot where a reporter will ask for that and the interview subject is unprepared. They haven't thought that through. A lot of people just don't put two and two together that if you're doing a television interview, there have to be visuals to go with it for every single story. So what can you provide that reporter? Part of media training is thinking not only about your interview, but the story itself. What can I offer the reporter? What visuals, multimedia elements, data, all that is going to be part of media training and getting a story together in a way that a reporter is going to pick up and be able to report on easily. Reporters also often need a good story angle, a clear narrative or a strong quote or soundbite. You really have to find a way to deliver that, though, without losing your message. A lot of times people will ramble and get off track. A good reporter can sometimes stop you and say, okay, let's get back on track. If it's a live interview, then you've wasted your time rambling and going off script and off message. So understanding those certain dynamics can make you a more valuable source. Ultimately, it's going to make you more successful in getting your message across, but it's also going to build a great relationship with that reporter so they know if they need someone in the future, they're going to come to you because you did a great job. You gave them exactly what they wanted. As I mentioned earlier, part of my media training sessions include recording the session so that we can watch it back later. Something a lot of people don't think about is nonverbal communication. So your body language, facial expressions, even the tone of your voice can really play a significant role in how your message is received. You know, if you're slouching in your interview or if you're looking all over the place, a lack of eye contact can really undermine what you're saying. It can make you look a little sketchy to the viewer. They're not likely to trust you, and it's possible that the reporter will use another soundbite or something else where you look a little bit more together. So media training really helps fine-tune all those nonverbal cues so that your entire communication package, both verbal and nonverbal, works together to reinforce your message and create a strong positive image for your brand. Something that I've worked in communications, both corporate and nonprofit. A question that I constantly, as a PR person, would get asked is, can I have the questions in advance? I kind of referenced that earlier. The answer to that is generally almost always no. And there's a reason for that. I have another podcast about that and why journalists won't provide questions in advance if you want to listen to that. But media training will help prepare you for questions or tough questions. So it's not uncommon for journalists to throw a curveball or ask something that you're not expecting, maybe something that kind of came out of nowhere. A lot of the interview process will be a journalist asking you a question, you answer it, and then they might do a follow-up. So depending on what you say, they may have a point of clarification, or you may have said something that they've never heard of before and want to explore that. So media training prepares you to go a little bit off the rails, if you will, and teaches you techniques to stay on message. If you're doing an interview on something that might be a little tough to talk about, maybe you're in crisis communication mode and you've had an issue at your business and you're trying to defend that or explain what happened, those can be tough questions. So media training helps turn even the toughest questions into an opportunity to emphasize your main points without losing control of the conversation. Time limits are really something that I have worked with clients on. You think you know what 2 minutes means, or you think you know what a minute 30 means. A lot of TV reporter scripts and packages are a minute 30. So that includes telling the story, your interview. They're usually probably going to have at least one other interview, maybe two other interviews. All those have to be in a minute 30. If you're doing a live interview, sometimes those can be 3 minutes. They can go up to 5 or even longer depending on the program. You think you know how long that is, but I hear all the time from clients, wow, that went so fast. It goes really, really fast. So making sure that you are prepared to speak in sound bites. Sound bites are really short, memorable statements that can make all the difference in how your message is perceived. Media training helps you develop those sound bites and really get your key points together and presented in a way that's easily understood by the viewer and more importantly is really memorable. So think it kind of as like a headline in a world of very short attention spans. So speaking in sound bites is another benefit of media training. Your interview might not also just air on TV. It could be shared across social media, websites, many other locations, digital apps, over the air on like streaming. There are many locations where your interview might air. So consistency in your message is key. So media training helps ensure that no matter the platform, your message stays consistent and coherent. You can work with your media trainer, or as in my case, I work with clients to make sure that they understand the key points they need to get across and stay on message. The consistency helps build credibility and really ensures that your brand's reputation remains intact. And speaking of your brand's reputation, let's talk a little bit about that. So an unprepared interview can lead to missteps or accidents that could damage your brand. Again, as I mentioned, with a potential crisis communications mode, you really want to make sure that your ducks are in a row, that you know what you're going to say, that you stay on message, and that you don't get frazzled or rattled during an interview. If it's a live interview, you really don't have a lot of chance to save yourself. In a recorded interview, you do have a couple opportunities where you might be able to, let's say you stumble or you say something kind of off message, or your voice cracks, as mine has done a couple times. You can say, hey, do you mind if I start that again? That's okay to do in a recorded interview. Obviously, you can't do that in a live interview. So knowing the format, being trained is important, but media training equips you with the skills to handle interviews confidently, professionally, and without stumbling and seeming like you have something to hide. So it really reduces the risk of saying something you'll regret. It helps protect your brand reputation and your brand's image. So as I went over some of those topics, I get asked a lot, is it important for me to have media training? I'm just a CEO of a nonprofit agency. I may be a small business that's launching a new product. I don't really know anything or need to even worry about that. I always say yes. It's always good to have media training. Not only is it going to help you be prepared, you never know when your story could involve you for any number of reasons. Going back to the nonprofit. So let's say you're a nonprofit that works with immigrants, and with the presidential debate and some comments that have been made, someone may come to you and say, I know you serve an immigrant group and in that kind of population. Would you be willing to speak to us on camera about your thoughts or how your clients are reacting to the narrative that's shifting on a national scale? So again, that could happen out of nowhere. You need to be prepared for that. For small businesses, even if you only have a few employees, you could get a call from a reporter who's trying to do a story about a development that's happening on the street where your small business is, and they want to get your reaction. So making sure that you have media training is crucial to anyone in any sort of professional setting, in my opinion, and having proper media training will set you up for success. So it's important to note media training is not just about learning how to speak to the camera. It's really about safeguarding your brand and turning every interview into a positive experience. So shameless plug, if you want to enhance your media presence and ensure your interviews are successful, you can certainly reach out to me at Scot Media Tulsa. My website is scotmediatulsa.com. That's Scot with one T, SCOT, mediatulsa.com. I have over 2 decades of experience working with journalists and as a journalist. I've worked in television newsrooms. I've worked in corporate communications offices, and I regularly work with clients on media training. I can do it in person if you're in the Tulsa area, or I can do it via Zoom if you are in another state or even in another country. A lot of times media interviews are done via Zoom, so there's no reason why that shouldn't be part of your media training. Even if I work with you in person to record it, set up the lights, all that I mentioned earlier, I'm also going to include virtual because so many journalists use that platform, whether it's Zoom or Teams or whatever else, to conduct interviews these days. It's important for any media training. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Press Play. Again, I have a full blog section on my website with this and other topics. I mentioned a couple, but there are tons of them on there. I invite you to explore those. They're all free on my website. You don't have to give me your contact information or email, phone number, any of that stuff. You can just go click on it, read it. I really want it to be helpful. I hope you find some benefit in that. I'm excited about next week's topic, where we're going to be talking about misinformation and how that applies to social media. Your feed, your friends' feeds, your business feed, everywhere you look. Can you trust what you see? What are some of the strategies you can use to make sure the information you're sharing or viewing is accurate? We're going to talk a little bit about that and the importance of responsible social media use. That's coming up next week. Thanks again for listening. I'm your host, Jeromee Scot, for this episode of Press Play.